Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. I hope that this one will be better put together than the last tutorial I made, which was a couple years ago, maybe a few years by now. This one is not rehearsed or notes or really organized in any way. I'm just going to start talking about the way that I turn MIDI files into basically metal. So whenever you first open FL Studio, you're not going to have all these windows with effects open right here, but you're going to have just this blank background. And what you do is you drag your MIDI file onto this black background, and it will give you all these channels. And right now I have mine all set to other things, but it'll open up like a guitar track or a bass track or drum track, depending on what the MIDI file actually has inside of it. So start this recorder. I turn off all the effects, so you're going to hear everything dry from the sampled instruments that I use. So to talk about that, what I use is called sound fonts. If you're not familiar with that, it's just a MIDI keyboard arrangement of samples of an instrument that you've recorded, or basically whatever sound you want, but in the sense of music, instruments. So for the guitars, I recorded every note open, and then the frets, and assigned them all to keys here. So the way it works is when you play E, A, D, G, B, E, and then the low B that is on a 7-string, because that's what I recorded on, you'll get an actual sound of an open note playing, and then in between all those keys, such as between E and A, all these notes here, that's actually on a fret, so it'll sound different than the open notes. So you kind of get what I mean there. And then for the bass guitar, just have it lowered an octave. Actually change by pitch. There's an option right here to change it by pitch. And the way you do that is this orange spot will be on C5 by default. You just right click over C6 and it puts it in an octave lower. But it still has that open and fretted sound. And it's good enough to run as a bass guitar, so it's basically the same exact sound font as I use for the guitars, but just an octave lower and through some different EQs and settings to make it sound like a bass guitar. And then the drum sets, kick and snare drum, are actually taken from the None So Vile. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. They're taken from the Blasphemy Made Flesh record that the song Defenestration comes from, which is the song that I'm using in this tutorial. Like, there were bits of the song where the drums got a split second in the audio by themselves doing a drum roll or a fill or anything like that, or where the kick drum was just playing like that. And I just basically turn those into their own samples and assign them to the keyboards. So anytime the piano roll goes over the C or D or E, it'll play a kick and a snare. And then the cymbals did not come from the actual record, nor did the toms. The toms are just some that I found on the internet that sounded good enough for this song. Pretty good sounding toms. And then the cymbals came from various YouTube videos of people sampling cymbals. Like, that whole video was dedicated to just the sound of that one cymbal, to where they play it by itself and then play it with drum beats and whatnot. So all the cymbals they're actually the exact ones that Flo Mounier uses on his drum set. And the hi-hat is actually special because it goes with the kick and the snare drum. It's sampled from the opening of one of their songs on Blasphemy Made Flesh. so it fits the whole atmosphere that the drums create in this record. And now I have about 10 minutes of this video left, because what I'm using is Screencast-O-Matic, and it only lasts 15 minutes. So without further ado, I'll play the song first without any EQs or effects. It's just through the clean guitar, the bass, and the drum samples that I have. It's going to sound very mechanical, but this is pretty much the way that it goes. Let me start it over for you. Here you go. Okay, now I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to turn these levels back down. I only turn them up to show you the preview without any effects. So with those turned back down to their normal settings, the drums are louder than everything else because of the way that they're set up. They have to be turned up more than the rest of the instruments. But the guitars have they're going through a clean guitar filter to filter out lows and a little bit of the highs, so it boosts the main parts that you would want to hear instead of noise. And then it goes through a compressor, and then my little chorus realism trick, which I explained in the last tutorial. You can look that video up on my channel. And then it goes through this for the distortion overdrive sound. I'm running everything just basically flat EQ, except for the presence a little bit. And then it goes through a convolver, which is basically the sound of, or the EQ frequency response of a certain cabinet. And then another equalizer to equalize the sound of the overdrive, basically the tone. And then a little reverb effect, and then a post effect EQ, which gives it its final filtering. And so the guitars by themselves have this sound. Well, I gotta turn the effect back on. Okay, there we go. All the effects are back on. Here are the guitars by themselves. And the trick that I use to get the left separated from the right, is where they don't run together in the middle and cause phasing issues, is on the chorus one. I have the speed knob cranked a little bit higher on the right and a little bit lower on the left, and so I do that on everything that needs a stereo effect that only is running from one mono sound font. So you can hear by themselves, they're both pretty good separated. They're not really blending in the middle and causing phasing issues or anything like that, or a flanging effect. Going pretty well. For example, if I take those off, I'll start having a little bit of an issue. I didn't take the right one off. Oh, here it is. There it is. So it'll play like in a mono and a strange phasing effect on the left and right. It doesn't stay consistent. Because it's all straight from the same mono samples. I'm going to turn those back on. It gives it that nice separated sound. So that's kind of a gist of how I do the guitar tracks. This channel is just for the intro guitar. Alright, and so all the drums are going through the chorus realism effect that I explained in the last video, and the toms and the cymbals and everything. They all have their own separate channels, aside from my last videos and techniques to where all the drums are running through one channel, and I just EQ'd everything, and everything was running basically through the same stuff, and it didn't give the cymbals their definition they needed. It didn't make the tom stand out, or the kick and snare had to be turned down a little bit in the highs to compensate for the other, the cymbals and everything. And the bass guitar I have running through like this. There's a program or an effect called hard chord. Basically, what you need to take note of is I have the low turned all the way up here and all the way down on this EQ. So it gives it, somehow it just makes it sound really tight and blend very well. So here's the bass by itself with the effects on. I turn those off. Sounds alright, but it ain't very tight. So that takes down or turns down the lows, and that brings them back up. So they kind of have some kind of sweet spot in between each other that gives it that really cool sound. So I got a little dip right here for the drums, and a peak for the low end of the bass guitar. Okay, now for the rest of the song, here's how it sounds. And then just to go over a few more things quickly. For the master track, I basically have an additional EQ that brings down everything below 20 hertz because that would just create mud and rumble. And then I put a little bit of a cut at 100 hertz because that frequency is known to cause headaches or hearing fatigue after prolonged periods of time of listening, as well as a certain high frequency, but that would be the low one that causes them. So I have that one dipped just a little bit. Also, the other reason to do that is because the palm muted guitars and the kick and snare and the low bass kind of all tend to congregate right there, and it just gives them more room to breathe. I got a little mid boost at 500, and you can kind of follow the rest of my curve that I have there. This is affecting everything. Everything's running through this filter, and then it goes through a limiter that monitors that one. And then this boost right here, what I'm using is this knob right here. It's turned up to 128%, and it just gives a certain boost to the song. Here's what that sounds like. I'll turn it off. So this top limiter is going to be with it off, and the bottom one's going to be with it on. See, the changes are right here. You can obviously hear the difference too. That's a little mastering tip. So people use saturation or whatever. I use this thing called Wave Shaper in FL Studio, and just put it a little. Just don't use too much, or it'll just really compress the song. But that's basically the gist of how I do things with converting MIDI. That's a knock on my door. My door? Better not be knocking on my door. I'm trying to do a freaking video. That's the gist of how I turn MIDI to metal. Thanks for watching.